Hello everyone, welcome to another video in the chat log series where you guys vote for a collection log slot and we complete them as a group while avoiding unlocking any other slot in the other collection logs. As a reminder, we have the tasks broken into tiers from beginner, easy, medium, hard, elite, and master. Your choices that we can currently do are for master, Inferno, elite, corrupt gauntlet, hard, Zora, easy, barrows, and beginner. We completed rooftop agility in the last video and we held a vote at the end of the last one, so you're going to be finding out the results of that in a minute. So I hope you enjoy today's episode and let's get into it. Okay, first things first, in the last video we completed our rooftop agility as I said, and that means that we get a new vote in. So let's go ahead and pull up the results, and looking at the results, it's gonna be Temporos this time. Okay, not really what I expected, but that's not too bad. It's one of the longer ones on here, but there are some useful things from it, like the fishing barrel you can use to fish carambons, which will be useful combo food for like every in-game boss, and really helpful for like Zora too, so not too bad. So it got a total of 8 votes, and second place was a few different things coming in at 6 votes. So yeah, it's just going to be Temporos this time. So I don't think we're going to be doing much of it at this time, just because we really want to go ahead and get started on the corrupt gauntlet because it gives so many good resources and weapons and armor. It just makes sense to go that route first. But we can, you know, maybe get some good food for Zora from Temporos if and when we decide to try and tackle that as well. It gives lots of shark and stuff like that, manta rays, turtles, high level food that'll be useful. So right now the current plan is to just keep questing and get our Barrows gloves as well as getting the stat requirements for Song of the Elves. To be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of all the quest progress in the last video, so I'm going to leave out every little quest that we did in every level and only show important quests and milestones. So with that said, let's go ahead and start on RFD, our recipe for disaster, and start working towards our Barrows gloves to get our precious plus 12 strength bonus, which will be great for AFKing sand crabs or ammonite crabs to get the combat that we need to actually kill Hunlif when the time comes. Okay, at this point I was pretty optimistic about the direction of the accounts and we had big dreams and plans. We had finished our first beginner task in rooftop agility and we were cruising right along on our way to corrupt gauntlet, like I said. But we were about to hit our first roadblock when we realized that we in fact could not get Barrows gloves. So there's 2 reasons for this. Reason 1 is Pirate Pete's part of the quest requires you to kill a crab to complete it. However, we have a slot in the beginner tier for that, and since we have Temporos as our current task, we can't really do that without risking the collection log slot. It's not a hard one to complete, but it is in the way of Barrows gloves right now, so we just can't do it, which means we can't kill the final boss and, you know, finish the quest out fully. The second is during ceramic vars, is that the pun they were going for? Part, you have to kill a black dragon in the fairy world, evil chicken lair place. Well, the visage, however you want to say it, is on its drop table, which is required as part of a bunch of other collection log slots, if I recall correctly. I know definitely King Black Dragon. So it's a very, very slim chance that we kill one and get a visage, but we don't want to risk it and ruin the accounts. So we're just going to go ahead and say that we're not going to get Barrows gloves at the moment, and that's fine. We don't really need any gear for Corrupt Gauntlet. It'll just make training take a little longer because we won't have the bonuses or whatever. But we can still get a really good setup for Zora going and for other future bosses just from Corrupt Gauntlet. So with that in mind, I just started questing and started working on my level 70s. And yeah, so I started with the elf quest line just to see if anything weird was going to come up. And so I had done up to Underground Pass in the last episode, so the next quest up was Regicide, which went perfectly fine. Roving Elves, no problem. Roving Elves, I can't read, I don't know. Morning's End Part 1, not a care in the world. Breezed right through that one. And then disaster struck and changed the entire course of our counts. So yeah, we've got big problems. I'm sure a lot of you remember Morning's End Part 2 if you've ever done it, because it has the incredibly complex light puzzle thing with multiple floors, which with Runelight's quest helper really isn't so bad anymore, but man, I remember wanting to smash everything in my house as a dumb kid trying to use Rune HQ and doing this quest. But anyways, the problem with this quest is that you get all the way up to the end of it and you need a death talisman to finish it, which is no big deal, right? There's currently 3 ways to get a death talisman as far as I know. The first is the modern way, which is Guardians of the Rift. It can be obtained from the reward shop by spending the little pearl things that you get, or you could get a catalytic talisman. Obviously we can't do that because Guardian of the Rift has a collection log slot and the catalytic talisman is on there, and we just can't risk getting any of the other drops while trying to get enough pearls to buy a death talisman from the shop. So that way is out. The next way is from Dark Beast, which for one requires 90 Slayer, which would take a lifetime on our awful accounts. Not to mention it's a task on the easy tier list, so even if we had 90 Slayer, we wouldn't be able to try and get this because we might get a dark bow and ruin the series. So, can't use that way either. That leaves the final method, the way that the quest intended, the item list. Once you make it to the death altar during the quest, the dwarf will give you a list with 50 seemingly random items on it, and if you bring them to him, he will give you a death talisman. Well, the items are sort of random, but they are limited in some ways. The item list on the wiki shows a bunch of guaranteed items you can get, but then it breaks it down into categories of books, keys, and a ticket, which you will only gonna need one of those from each one of these categories. So all of that's perfectly fine except for the ticket slot. So the 3 types of tickets you can get are the archery ticket, which you can just go to the Archer's Guild and get. It's not tied to a collection log slot, so that would be perfectly safe for us to get if we needed to. The next is an agility arena ticket, which we absolutely cannot get because Brimhaven agility is a beginner tier task, and we can only do Temporos right now since that's what you guys voted for. So if we got Brimhaven agility ticket on our item list, that means that that person cannot get the death talisman. But the good thing is that we only need 1 death talisman anyways, and then we can just trade it to each other once, one person gets it. So even if one of us gets unlucky, chances are the other one wouldn't. So the last ticket that you can get is a Castle Wars ticket, which also has a collection log slot in the Castle Wars things, which means normally we would not be able to get this if we got assigned to get it. However, there is a way around this. During the quest wanted, Solus, whatever his name is, Solus, I guess that's what they were going for, actually drops one of these on the ground as a clue to where he teleported to for you to track him down. So if you pick this ticket up during the quest, it doesn't actually count towards your collection log slot. So I actually have one of these in the bank. So if I get this one, I can do this without getting the collection log slot. So that's very useful. So that means 2 of the 3 options for tickets are doable. So we have a 66% chance to be able to get the talisman. Between me and Tony, we get to a 66% chance 2 times. So as long as one of us gets it, we can use it and pass it to the next person. So Tony went first and of course got unlucky and got Brimhaven agility arena ticket. So he cannot complete his list without ruining the series potentially. Alright, so that was pretty unlucky. It was a 1 in 3 chance to get that, and he got that item. But there's no way that I would get agility arena ticket too, right? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So now we're pretty much screwed. Our whole plan is pretty much up in flames because everything we've done has been to get to Corrupt Gauntlet so far. That's the entire build of our accounts ever since you guys voted for it. Even Rooftop Agility was just a convenient stop on the way since we needed 70 agility for Song of the Elves anyways, and the Graceful, helped a lot with questing. But now we need to reevaluate everything. The only way this quest was probably ever going to get done is if you guys voted for either Guardians of the Rift or for Brimhaven Agility Arena. And looking back at the vote, you guys didn't seem to be too interested in Brimhaven with only 2 votes for it, but Guardian of the Rift was actually tied for 2nd place with 6 votes. So maybe there's a chance that you guys would vote for one of those 2 for us to be able to, do Corrupt Gauntlet. That's where this series gets interesting. Now that you guys know we need these things to move forward with our plans, it's up to you whether you help us or you want us to slog through all the beginner tier stuff until we finally leave you guys with no choice but to vote for what we need. So let's see what kind of community you guys are. Even saying that, it's not so simple though, is it? Even if you guys felt nice enough to help us, we still have to get through the entire Temporos log to even force a new vote, to even have a chance for you guys to give it to us. And this log is pretty brutal for the beginner tier, if we're being honest. The pet is 1 in 8k, but there's also the Dragon Harpoon at 1 in 8k as well, which is also on the worm drop table. So even if you get lucky on one, it's unlikely you get lucky for the other one too. It's not crazy to think we would need to do between 10 to 20,000 reward permits between us if we go as dry, as I seemingly always do, like BA Chunkman. So even the other drops could take a while to get if you get unlucky, like the Tome of Water is a 1 in 1600, as well as the Big Swordfish. The Tackle Box and Fish Barrel come in at 1 in 400, so hopefully they wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, you could absolutely go dry between the Harpoon, Pet, and the Swordfish, and the Tome. Yeah, this could be really bad. So the Spirit Angler part of it we can't complete until you guys vote for Fishing Trawler, because you have to have the Angler outfit, but it doesn't really take many rounds to unlock this, so I'm not worried about it. We'll go back and get it after you guys vote for Fishing Trawler one day. So that's going to be the only thing that we omit, because, we don't want to get that gross Fishing Trawler slot unlocked until you guys pick it. And we're going to have more than enough flakes regardless, so we're going to call it complete when we've done everything else. There were no more ideas about how to get this Death Talisman. We were able to bypass some quest requirements in the last episode with some creative thinking, but all we had in front of us for the moment was this Temporos grind, so that's exactly what we did. We started grinding. At first I did about 600 permits of solos, and I actually got kinda lucky. I got some soaked pages, a fish barrel, which will be great for Caramblon fishing in the future, the tackle box, and holy shit, I even got lucky and got the big harpoon fish. So it was a great start. But the Pet and Dragon Harpoon loomed over our group, as we knew that 2 1 in 8k drops could take a very long time. And let's be honest, Temporos is not the most fun thing to do in this game. So that's when I discovered the Firefighter method, which gives better points per hour. So instead of just trying to brute force it doing solos 7 to 10 points at a time, I began to shift my focus towards being able to do the Firefighter method. This method requires completion of Dream Mentor to use Humidify to refill buckets to put out an island's worth of fires for a ton of points. On average, probably 5 to 6 more permits per kill. Although I don't have research to back that up, that's just what I've seen. So that would take a ton of time off the grind if I was able to do this. The only problem is, to use Humidify, I need to get 68 magic and finish Dream Mentor, which means I need to do Lunar Diplomacy, which also has its own requirements. So while we were leveling our accounts, we prioritized Tony getting Glass Make for crafting levels, so my magic levels were pretty low and I didn't really have any alks to level it up at this point. Because at that point in the account, I wasn't really concerned with getting lunar spells, because he could pretty much do whatever we needed since we had fed him the magic levels and he had lunars. So I stopped doing Temporos and started grinding for Dream Mentor, doing a ton of sand crabs, working my way to 85 combat, a bunch of alk agility for magic levels, and 70 agility for Song of the Elves, and a bit of crafting with the glass that Tony made for me. While I was doing all this to get ready to do some meta Temporos, Tony went into the darkness. He started grinding Temporos and came up with 4,500 reward permits by the time I was 67 magic and just 1 level shy of Humidified to get back into the temp grind myself. Remember, 4,500 permits is a lot of rewards, don't get me wrong, but it's only slightly over halfway to even thinking about getting the pet. What I'm about to show you, I need to give you a trigger warning. For anyone that's ever went dry somewhere, you might want to avert your eyes. What you're about to see is the most disgusting and maybe one of the craziest logs I've ever seen in my entire life. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. In 4,502 tries, Tony got 2 harpoons, the pet, 6 tomes of water, 3 big harpoon fish. I'm not exaggerating when I say this may be one of the craziest logs I've ever seen in my entire life. We were thinking it would be good if we would be done by like mid-September, and it's already over. I actually feel bad because I spent all that time preparing for Humidify to do the firefighter method and ended up basically contributing nothing but 600 permits because I was going to join him after I was done. So now that you've seen how blessed Tony is, what do you think? Do you give us what we want, which would be Guardians of the Rift or Brimhaven Agility? Or do you really punish us here and make us slog through every beginner task to finish Morning's End Part 2, which would allow us to start the Corrupt Gauntlet? The choice, as always, is in your hands. Discuss in the comments below, and remember, Temporos only won by 2 votes this time, so your vote matters a lot. The link to the vote will be in the description below as always, and you'll have 24 hours to decide our fate. After 24 hours, the vote will be closed, so think about it carefully. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon with new voting results.